Hey there, it's your boy Foxy, back for more relationship stories. Sometimes you think you have people figured out and decide to start a family with them, only to be blindsided with a terrible betrayal, especially when you are in a very vulnerable state. Imagine what this poster felt when she found out that her husband is with another woman. A woman introduced as his friend and told not to worry about, just days after she gave birth to their firstborn, when he claimed he was out of town for business. Let's start with the original post. I don't know what to do. We just had our baby 6 weeks ago, and when he told me about his business trip, I got a little upset because I'm all alone here. And this is our first child, so I don't know what the heck we're doing most of the time. I couldn't just refuse to let him go, however, because I knew when I met him that traveling is part of his job, so he left. He's very supportive otherwise, very happy about being a father, and he called us maybe 5 to 6 times a day to see if we're doing all right. Last night I was scrolling down IG, and there he was in the background of a local celebrity I followed, sitting in a restaurant with his friend from uni. The woman who always disliked me, and who he told me not to worry about. He's been on this trip since Monday, and is supposed to come back next Monday. I'm so heartbroken, I don't know what to do. I will obviously talk to him when he gets home, but what are my options afterwards? I'm a stay-at-home wife right now, and I haven't worked since I graduated 5 years ago. My husband makes a good living and he didn't think me working was a necessity. I don't have a family except him. If I leave him, how am I going to fend for my son? Who is going to take care of him if I start working? I feel so trapped. Edit. I'm so overwhelmed with the amount of messages and support. I'm going to make it clear here that I'm not going to jump into any conclusions yet. I just had my suspicions about the friend, and I was always wary of her. I'm going to give my husband the benefit of the doubt, of course, but unfortunately my gut feeling is telling me this is what I'm dreading the most. Thank you. Now for the top advice before reading the update. I said this in another comment, but the picture might be a few days old. The influencer might not have uploaded it in the day she took it. So maybe try to video call your husband, and maybe ask to see the view of his hotel room. Try to ask him stuff that force him to speak more about where he is, so you can know for sure that he lied about the business trip. Also, if he tells you the name of the hotel, you can try to call and see if a sympathetic employee can give you any info about him being or not being there. I thought so too, but she had made Instagram stories as well in the same restaurant. I like the idea of trying to video call him. I know Insta celebrities that also post days or weeks old stories. They line up all their content in advance, so they can take a break, but it looks like they are active. They also do it to try and prevent stalkers. Don't jump to conclusions until you have ascertained where your husband actually is. Just out of interest, do you know where the restaurant was? It might sound like a stupid question, but I think it's relevant. If you can't be sure the restaurant is local, then there's a tiny chance this IG influencer may have been in the same place at the same time somewhere out of town. Calling 5 or 6 times a day doesn't sound like something a cheating husband would do either. I hope it turns out to be a misunderstanding. I agree that it's possible he's not cheating. The phone calls don't mean anything though. When I travel for work, the cheaters are the ones talking to their partners multiple times a day. Now for the first update. Hello again, I'm so happy I found you guys here. My husband is home now, but it was what I feared. I don't know if I made a terrible job of explaining the situation in my last post, but the influencer lives in our city, and she was in a restaurant in our city. My husband was supposed to be out of town for business. I took the advice you gave me about influencers not usually posting same-day pictures, but it still struck me as an oddity because he has never mentioned having dinner with this friend. I tried to contact the influencer, but she has over 1.5 million followers. As I said, my husband's work includes a lot of traveling, and he usually do a video tour in his hotel room for me or send me some pictures. This time he didn't, so yesterday when he called, I asked him to FaceTime me to see our son. He told me to wait because the room was messy, and he called after 5 minutes. We talked and he saw our son, and then I asked him for a mini tour. He showed me some parts and I took some screenshots. My husband laughed about me taking screenshots and was a bit confused. It isn't that unusual for me to do anyway, so he didn't make a fuss. I went later to hotels.com and started comparing pictures. I found the hotel within 15 minutes. It's less than 10 minutes from our place. It was a bit late, but I took my son and went anyway. The front desk didn't want to tell me what room he was in. I asked her to tell him to come down, but she refused to do that too since it was midnight. I texted him to come down to the reception. When he came down, he was like he was seeing a ghost. I told him to take me to his hotel room now. He refused and asked me to go home, and that he would explain everything later. I told him if he didn't take me to his room now and without warning his friend, I will scream. I don't know why I wanted to see her. It's like even after finding out he's been in town all this time, and even after seeing the look on his face, I still wanted to catch them to drive the message home, so my heart doesn't cave to his excuses and explanations that he was already starting on. He refused, however, to take me up, so I just left with my baby. He came home maybe an hour after me and he wanted to talk and explain when I'm ready. I'm not ready yet, so I asked him to move out and leave me be for the time being. He agreed. I don't know why he did this, why he married me. I'm 29 and he's 39, and his mistress is also 39. She's a single mom and they're more compatible and they get along very well. And they obviously love each other. So why didn't he just be with her instead and save us all the heartbreak? Honestly, what's wrong with people? More update. I'm sorry, I don't want to make any more updates. My husband has agreed to moving out of our apartment. Since we have a prenup, I'm essentially not entitled to anything, but he has offered the apartment since I have nowhere to go. I told him I needed more assurance that the apartment is for me and my son. He's going to transfer the deeds in my name, whatever that means. I'm also going to get alimony or allowance or whatever it's called until my son is old enough to start looking for jobs. All of this conversation was recorded. On Monday, I'm going to talk to a lawyer to make sure what my husband promised me is going to happen. In return, he asked me for separation and not divorce for 2 years. I agreed. About the other woman, I don't know if it's worth my energy to find out more. They have been FWB when they're single, but never had a relationship. They've known each other for 20 years. I didn't want to hear anything about them. I always had my suspicions. He made the usual excuses about her meaning nothing. It was a mistake, and this was their first time because he felt neglected because I wasn't as interested in him as before the baby. He swore he never slept with her during our marriage until this week. I don't believe him. If they end up together, I wouldn't be surprised even though he assured me it will never happen because he doesn't love her. Now for more comments before the final update. The hotel was less than 10 minutes from your house, but he showed up like an hour late, instead of running after you. Obviously he had to go to her to talk the plan with her. Piffed, idiot. Exactly. There is nothing left to say to him. Don't listen to that nonsense. Get a lawyer. Split. Man, that's a horrible way to be treated. Sorry for the outcome. I'm sorry too. I'm so sad. Why didn't he just ask me for divorce if he wasn't happy with me? Why did he make a child with me? He is sorry because he got caught. I'm a 40-year-old male, and I remember my dad always cheated on my mom. I remember her crying at night but always took him back. Finally, she had enough. To this day, I can't imagine doing that to my wife or kids. A divorce would be the proper way to go before cheating. No matter what, it's hard on the family. Once again, sorry. Be strong for you and child. Read this a few days ago and was hoping that maybe it was a late posted photo. I'm really sorry about the outcome. It is better for you to know the truth though, and good on you for kicking him out. You deserve a lot better than that. Now for the final update. Hi again. I wasn't planning a new update. I am so appreciative of all the support I've got here, but also, I have received a big amount of hate. It's a small number compared with the majority of people who showed me support, but I don't know why it got to me anyway. Maybe because I already feel vulnerable, or maybe because these things were always in the back of my head. I was attacked for being a stay-at-home wife, for being young, for being a gold digger, for having an older husband, for having a rich husband, for having a baby with my husband, for exposing my husband's infidelity, for not having a safety net, for trusting my husband, for not trusting my husband enough, for demanding that the man I love leave our home after he cheated on me, and it goes on. I should have just ignored everything and concentrated on healing, and I'm going to do that, but I have a small final update to share with the thousands that cared and supported. I don't have a family because I'm an only child. My parents died when I was 5. My grandmother raised me, but she died when I was 20. Many have requested an update about his friend. I texted her that she's an ugly, pathetic, cheap woman who always hated me and always was jealous of me. That even if she ended my marriage and ruined my happiness and the chance for my baby to grow up with both his parents and the future siblings we've planned, she will never have my husband because she's an ugly, pathetic, cheap woman. It has never happened, and it will never happen. But if her goal in life was to sneak around in hotels with married men, then congratulations. I told her I wished what she got from him was worth ruining my life, but that I'm happy that I at least don't need to have her in my life again. I didn't feel any better, to be honest, and regret stooping so low. She texted me back a picture of her and my husband at the hotel with the winking emoji. I forwarded it to my husband. This was yesterday. He showed up around dinner and told me everything. He slept with her during our relationship. He told me he was sorry and that he was relieved now that I knew everything because she can't hold it against him anymore. I kicked him out. I regret knowing all this. We had our first meeting with the lawyers today. The prenup covers my husband's assets up until we got married. He comes from a wealthy family, and I'm not to touch any of that. My husband is self-made, however, so I'm entitled to 50% of everything he made since we got married. My husband also offered our apartment as an apology, even if the apartment was from his family, and he's going to pay child support. It's really all I need right now and much more than I expected. Divorce takes a couple of years or even more sometimes, especially when children are involved. I think my husband lives with the hopes that I'll forgive him down the road. I know he's always been generous, but he must have some kind of hope to make me this offer because it can't be just remorse. He apologized for hurting me, and I can't even describe how lonely and devastated I am right now. He and my son are my only family and I've lost him. And all for what? I can't believe I still love him so very much, and since he moved out, I haven't stopped crying. I miss him. How could he do this to us for an ugly, pathetic, cheap woman? Get everything agreed upon and in writing, quickly. He might be willing to give stuff up right now, but he might change his tune in the coming weeks or months. Do not trust him to keep his word on anything. That's what the lawyers are going to do. I'm unfortunately very ignorant in these things. I just want my home and my baby safe. Do you have your own lawyer? If not, the lawyers you met with are your husband's lawyers. Get your own representation to comb through the prenup for an infidelity clause. I strongly suspect he's being so generous now because he may be vulnerable to something in the prenup. Contact an attorney of your own as soon as possible. They will end up getting paid by your husband. Consultations are free. If he has moved out, change the locks on the door or at the very least set up boundaries as to when he can come over. Do not give him unfettered access like he still lives there. He's handed you a crap sandwich, but you don't have to eat it exactly how he's serving it to you. Your husband is so weird because he was never going to tell about the fact they slept together if it weren't for that picture. He has probably not told me everything either. They never tell you more than what you already know. And you shouldn't torture yourself with it. Take this time to heal and focus on your son. Screw him and his side piece. It's toxic energy you don't need. Best of luck. Please do not let this man talk his way back into your life. Family can be chosen. Make friends, create a life for your son, but don't let loneliness bring him back. The woman, though a horrible human, has no loyalty to you, but your soon-to-be ex does. She did not hold him as a hostage and force herself upon him. He was a willing participant. His apologies are to cleanse his own conscience. Nowhere does he accept accountability for his role here. He wants to make you this sweet offer, so down the road you think, oh, he was so lovely to do things to help me, maybe we can fix it. He wants back in, while painting himself to be a person who was too victimized by this woman. Please don't feed that delusion. Now for the last story. I, 27 female, am afraid of my ex, 25 male, showing up to the hospital when I give birth to our son. Long story short, I was in a serious relationship with my ex-boyfriend for a little over a year. I became pregnant unexpectedly at the end of our relationship. When I found out, I told him about it and gave him the choice to be involved or not. I am at a point in my life where I am able and willing to raise a child on my own. However, I wanted to give him an opportunity to be a father to our son in some capacity. I really loved this man and believed I would marry him someday based on conversations we had when we were together. But when I told him about my pregnancy, he totally freaked out, said he wanted me to terminate it, and even went as far as to send me papers via an attorney asking me not to contact him. I obliged to this and haven't talked to him since. Unfortunately, even though we haven't been in contact for nearly my entire pregnancy, he has still continuously gone out of his way to harm me emotionally. He has contacted my boss and the agencies I work with about this, and has even gone as far to have his family members and friends contacts my OBGYN office so many times that I had to switch practices at 24 weeks pregnant. His behavior is scaring me, and although I've asked people both in my life and our life for help, I'm not getting anywhere. At this point, I am afraid of him and what he might do. I have never asked him for anything during this time, financial or otherwise, nor have I badmouthed him or went against his wishes concerning his privacy. I have only been trying to do what is best for our son, and I cannot figure out what his motivations are to treat us this way. I begged my parents to block his phone number and asked that they not inform him when I give birth. They refused to do so, and it's making me extremely anxious. I don't want him showing up at the hospital at all, especially during a time that it could affect the health of my son or myself. My response to this was to invite them to the hospital after I've given birth, but they are not willing to accept this. They insist on driving me to the hospital in their car and staying the entire time. I set to be induced tomorrow and am now more anxious than ever. All I want is to have my son in peace, while feeling safe. Does anyone have any other ideas on how I can approach this? I already plan on leaving my son's father off of the birth certificate. Thank you for reading this. Call the hospital and ask if they will enforce no attendance birth, including your parents. Many hospitals will protect the mother and prevent people from coming to the birth. If the hospital does not do that, call. Hey there, it's your boy Foxy, back for more relationship stories. Some people just don't have the best childhood. I was lucky not to experience bullying growing up, but I hear some horror stories out there. And people like that who were victimized can only struggle to break free from that lingering mental torture, to change and be the best version of themselves. And some do succeed, like the OP in this first story. He managed to transform himself into someone he can be proud of, even got with the girl he thought great enough to marry. But then this same girl somehow managed to bring that torment back into his life, and he discovers something about his girl that would ruin the future he thought they were going to have. Let's read his story. Original post. My 26 male, fiancée Becca, 26 female, her best friend Daria, 26 female, and I all went to high school together, but I ran in a very different social circle. They played sports and were decently well known or popular. I was really into art and computers, chubby with an awkward haircut. We all went to a really large high school, so it was more that I knew of them, rather than actually knowing them. Becca and Daria have been best friends since they were really young. They both moved into the same neighborhood in preschool and their parents are very close. In high school, there was a guy, Chris, 26 male, who would regularly bully me. There was a name that Chris and his friends called me based on a thing that happened my sophomore year. It was essentially a trap that Chris and friends had set up so that I would be embarrassed, and they could pretend I had done it to myself. I feel like I'm already doing a bad job hiding my identity, so let's just say that the name was Stinky. I hated it. They called me this all the time, and made me the butt of many of their jokes. Chris was very popular and was friends with Becca and Daria in high school. Chris was good-looking, wealthy, and he knew it. He walked around like he was untouchable. Insert all of the wealthy, athletic, good-looking stereotypes that you want here. They pretty much all rang true for him. I hated him, and hated any time that I had to be around him. I know that a lot of people face some really violent bullying, so I don't want it to make it sound like I was physically tortured, but I did feel like I was relentlessly harassed. I was very thankful and excited to get out of my hometown and away from those people when I went to college. I don't know if it was growing up and growing into myself, the ability to reset my identity, or just getting away from tormentors, but I really found myself in college. I'm still a bit nerdy and artistic, but I grew into my body. I started making friends and realized that I had something to offer the world. I rapidly became a lot more confident and comfortable socially. Becca and I ended up going to the same college a few hours away, but she didn't have a car. I offered her a ride home for Thanksgiving break, and it became a habit of riding together for breaks and chatting about life and school. We started to become friends and our friend group started to combine. In sophomore year, our talks became deeper and more personal. I realized I was into her on the way home for Christmas and asked her on a date over break. We've now been together almost 7 years, engaged for the last year. We have a strong relationship, communicate well, go on regular dates and trips, and have supported each other through numerous ups and downs. We have had our fights over the years and even did some counseling together for about a year. I was bringing my parents' passive-aggressive style of fighting into our relationship, and she was assuming I was criticizing her all the time because her mom's horrible behavior. We've found those times to be challenging, but helpful in the long run. I love this woman and I'm excited to get married and spend our lives together. Becca and Daria reconnected after college and now own a business together that plans events and helps connect people and businesses to local food, drinks, and experiences. Their business really took off in the year before COVID, and they've been slowly but steadily growing back as things have been opening up. They have started to enter into a number of exclusive contracts with event spaces and restaurants or breweries. In a market where things can turn quickly, these deals are super important to them, as they provide a lot of security for their company. Becca came home about 2 months ago, really excited about a new brewery exploring an exclusive deal. About a week later, the brewery signed and there was a dinner to celebrate. Becca asked if I want to come and meet the team from the brewery. She told me that I might have met the owner before, but I guess I didn't think to ask who it was because I didn't know who it was going into the dinner. If you're still with me, you can probably guess who the brewery owner is. I was sitting at the table with Becca waiting for the rest of the group to arrive, when Chris came through the door, walked up to the table, greeted Becca, and then turned to me and said, "Hi, Stinky." I was immediately confused and angry. She knew that I knew Chris, and she knew that he had harassed me throughout high school. She didn't mention at any point prior that he was the owner of the brewery, and that she was working closely with him. I got through dinner, But on the way home, when I asked why she didn't tell me, she blew it off as though it was water under the bridge, that I had changed and that I should understand that Chris had changed too. I was still upset but tried to let bygones be bygones. Over the next couple of weeks, it was clear that Daria and Chris were becoming romantically involved with each other. Becca and I usually spend 2 to 3 nights a week with Daria, whether going out or simply watching TV at our house or hers. We often joke that we're a throuple, but to be clear, that is not the case, and what we have is strictly platonic. Over the last month or so, Chris started showing up to nights out and even came over one night to Daria's house when we were hanging out and watching TV. I've tried to be open to a new Chris, but he seems like he's the same overly macho, trying too hard to be alpha jerk he was all those years ago. I tried to bring up to Becca that the casual relationship between Daria and Chris is probably not good for their business. And while Becca agreed, she felt like she couldn't tell her friend to not date or sleep with someone. Last week, Becca invited me along to an industry event. I get there only to unfortunately find Chris is there as well. I try to be friendly and nice. We get a table for the 4 of us and have some drinks and food. At one point, the girls leave to network with a couple of potential clients. When out of nowhere, Chris starts talking about how this event might be a good place for him and Daria to find a woman to have a threesomething with. Caught completely off guard, I ask him what he's talking about, and he says that him and Daria want to have another one of those, and that I should know all about that. I was super confused and asked what he was talking about, and he proceeds to tell me that Daria and Becca had a couple of that activity in high school, and that he figured that I was having it with the 2 girls as well. I felt blindsided and didn't know what to say. When we got home, Becca already knew I was upset about something, and asked me what was wrong. I told her about what Chris had said, and she tried to deny it at first, but then told me that it was partially true. What Becca told me was that Daria and Chris were FWBs for a bit at the end of senior year right before college. Chris and Daria spent a few weeks talking with her about doing that with them, but she was on the fence. At a party when everyone was tipsy, it was brought up again and she went to a bedroom with them. Note for mods, they were all 18 at the time. They all stripped down and did a lot of kissing and touching, but Becca backed out of going all the way and instead just watched them. On Thanksgiving break of freshman year, the 3 talked about going all the way with it, but ended up not being able to find a free time for all of them. Daria then got a boyfriend and it was never brought up again. All of this was news to me. In addition to not really coming into myself until college, I was a late bloomer in terms of relationships, and Becca was my first everything. I knew and wasn't upset that she had experience before us, but we had never really gone into the when or who of that. Becca keeps saying that I never asked, and that she never lied about all this, but, especially with doing business with Chris, it feels like lying by omission to me. I'm struggling with all this. Chris did his best to make my life awful in high school and now is back. Almost every time I spent time with him, he seems to be belittling me, making fun of me. He even told Becca in front of me that she could do better than me and was dating down. She told me later that it was just a joke and to stop being so sensitive. It seems like this threesomething is just one more thing he can hold over me. He's a snake and always seems to say the worst stuff to me when Becca and Daria are just out of earshot. We've been arguing about this situation for about a week now. I asked Becca to cut all contact with him last night, and she told me I was being unreasonable. He's with her best friend and they all do business together. I asked if it was that Daria and her need his brewery's contract. She keeps asking me why I can't move on and just accept that Chris is a different person. Now for the top advice before reading the update. Almost every time I spent time with him, he seems to be belittling me, making fun of me. He even told Becca in front of me that she could do better than me and was dating down. She told me later that it was just a joke and stop being so sensitive. That's gonna be a no from me, dog. There's no, how can I fix this? There is a, how can she fix this? Thanks for that, babe. Hey, can I see that ring I gave you back for a bit? Just want to have the jeweler check the setting for you. If she can't see why this is a problem for you, then maybe she's just an awful person. Edit, I have reread and examined other comments. Change maybe to definitely an awful person. I have a feeling this dude is gonna sleep with OP's fiancée. It's just a matter of when it happens. OP, if you have any self-respect, you will leave her, because she clearly doesn't have any for you. Last time I checked, your partner is supposed to stick up for you, not justify some giant sociopath's horse manure by claiming he was joking. Stop being so sensitive. Your fiancé is a terrible person who has zero respect for you. She keeps asking me why I can't move on and accept that Chris is a different person. The thing is, you had moved on. Chris is not. Chris keeps bringing up the past. Hell, the very first time Chris saw you at the dinner where you saw him for the first time after high school, he used the nickname that was used to torment you throughout high school. It's plainly obvious who has not moved on here. It's Chris, Daria, and Becca. You have said that breakup is not an option, but it needs to be a weapon in the arsenal. Your first step should be counseling immediately, though. Becca is absolutely not seeing things from your point of view, and, until she can, there can be no moving forward. It's also obvious the attempts to talk to her one-on-one have failed to get her to see your point of view. I would also continue to sleep in the guest room. She needs to understand that this situation is deeply troubling for you. And to be honest, I'd even consider showing her this thread. Let her see how others are reacting to her actions. I'm sure she'll dispute certain details, but if the overall gist of what you wrote is truthful, it won't change our answers. She has not treated you with the respect a life partner deserves in this. And now for the update. About 3 months ago, I made a post here about my fiancé doing business and hanging out with a former bully. In that post, I wrote that I wasn't looking to break up with my fiancé. Rather, I was looking on how to fix things. Almost all the comments were about how I needed to break up with this girl, call her out on her manipulative BS, and so on. I was really angry with the majority of advice I got, and figured that this forum didn't know what they were talking about. I guess those would be the famous last words. In the week after I made my initial post, Becca and I seemed to have a daily fight about her and Chris. I came home from work one day after having a long fight the night before, to find Becca not in our house. This wasn't surprising in the moment since she works a really irregular schedule, but then I noticed that a bunch of her things were missing. I tried to text her making sure she was okay, and got a long text in response about how she was going to stay with her sister and how she needed some space, and for me not to contact her for a few days. I was confused, frustrated, and upset, but figured that if all she needed was some space, hopefully that would be what could get our relationship back on track. The next night, Daria texted me asking if she could come over to talk. When she got there, she told me she had been a bad friend to me. Basically, there were a number of things she felt like she should tell me, but didn't know where to draw the line between her friendship with me and her friendship with Becca. We talked for a few hours and multiple things came out. A few months before, Becca told Daria that she was doubting our relationship. Becca told her that she felt like we had gotten together so young, that she was missing out on experiences by being with me. Note, Becca never said anything about this to me. When I was thinking later about what Daria had told me this night, I remembered that months prior, Becca had this really weird week where she was really distant and kept asking me questions about what it was about her that made me want to get married. She told me later that she had just been in a weird headspace, and I kind of forgot about those conversations. When Becca and Daria first met with Chris, Becca was really flirty with him. In their industry or work connections, it's not uncommon for people to do things like be a bit flirty, a little touchy with each other, or talk about their intimate lives. This was always something I found weird or uncomfortable, but knew it to be a culture of the industry. But in this case, Daria said it went enough with Chris that she noticed it as strange. Once Daria told Becca that she had started hooking up with Chris, Becca would regularly ask for details, so much so that Daria told me she started lying to Becca, saying that their hookups were happening less frequently than they actually were, so that she wouldn't be hounded for details. A week or so before Becca and I fought about her connection with Chris, Becca was hounding Daria for details on the latest hookup and casually dropped that they should have a group activity with Chris. Daria said that she was super uncomfortable and immediately brought up Becca and my relationship. Becca said that she was just joking, but made the same joke 3 or 4 other times, until Daria said directly to her that it made her uncomfortable, and that she needed to stop. Then she got to the biggest thing. On the night that Becca left, she showed up drunk at Chris' place. He let her in, and then she tried to sleep with him. I guess Daria was in the bedroom or something, because after a bit, Daria came out to see Becca trying to grab at Chris, so they worked together to kick her out. Angry, sad, and confused, I packed my things and left our place. I didn't want to be there in case she came back, so I stayed with a friend for a bit. I didn't try to reach out to Becca, and didn't hear from her either. About 2 weeks after Daria came to talk, my mom passed away. She had had a stroke years ago and had been declining for a long time. Her passing wasn't unexpected, but that didn't mean that it wasn't super hard. It was always just me and Mom growing up. I was struggling a lot and felt so alone. I almost called Becca a number of times. The day of the funeral, Becca showed up. At first, I was happy to see her. She was by my side much of the day, and I was thankful she was there. Things felt normal with her there. I felt secure. It felt like we were together again, a team again. Then, when people were coming up to me after the burial, Becca said to one of my old neighbors about how sad we were, how hard it's been on us, and how we need to rely on each other. It was as though there was fog in my head that instantly lifted, and I started flipping out on her. In hindsight, I feel bad about the scene that I caused at my own mom's funeral. But I couldn't believe she was pretending that we were together, that she had been supporting me, and that she hadn't tried to be with another guy a couple of weeks before. I was really happy that my cousin stepped in and told her to leave. I blocked her on everything, and since my fiancé and mom were the only things keeping me in that area, a little over a week after the funeral, I packed up and moved to the East Coast where my cousin lives. I've been here for a little under 2 months. I wish I could say that I'm in a job making a lot more money, or that I have a hot new girlfriend, but it's been a bit of a struggle to settle in. I'm in my same job, working remote, but do need to travel to my home city every few weeks. I feel anxious there, worried that I will run into Chris or Becca. My cousin has tried to be welcoming, and I'm thankful he's given me a landing pad as I've looked for my own place here. But him and his friends are older and they mostly are focused on family life and kids, so it's been hard to make friends. I've signed up for a volleyball beer league though this fall, so hopefully there's some good people there. I want to thank this community for giving me the hard truth. I've had plenty of DMs checking in on me, which I'm mostly thankful for. This last season has been probably the hardest and darkest of my life, but I feel decently hopeful for what's ahead. Sorry to hear about all that, but at least you found out before getting married. Spend some time getting to know your new surroundings, and don't try to rush any friendships or relationships. They will happen at their own pace. Settling into a new place and making new friends is super tough as an adult. I'm so glad you joined that volleyball league. It'll be exactly what you need. Yeah, it'll take some time, but it's good OP is getting a clean break. Daria was really a good friend to you in the end. The cynic in me sees a woman who wanted her friend to stop hollering at her squeeze. Or she was trying to get revenge on Becca for trying to hook up with her boyfriend behind her back. I definitely thought of that too, but luckily her talk helped OP get free from his ex, whatever her intentions were.